I stood in the crowded terminal of Denver International Airport with a battered suitcase by my side, its wheels squeaking when I shifted it slightly. My back ached from the weight of years, and the sharp chill of the air conditioning bit through my jacket. I kept glancing at the clock above the check-in counters, its red digits flashing 9:20 a.m. My son should have been here already. Tickets in hand for the family vacation to Belize I had saved and planned for. Instead, my phone buzzed, his name. Lighting the screen, relief rushed through me. I pressed it to my ear and said, "Where are you, Daniel? I am waiting right by the counter." There was silence, too long. Then his voice flat and cold. "Dad, we are already on the plane. You are not coming." I gripped the suitcase handle so tightly the leather squeaked beneath my palm. My breath caught. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice cracking. Then through the speaker came a low laugh, not Daniel's but Clara's, his wife, sharp and mocking. "Finally a vacation without this old man," she whispered, and giggled again. My knees weakened, but I stood rooted as Daniel spoke once more. "It is better this way, Dad. You just slow us down. We will talk when we get back." The line went dead. The noise of the airport returned like a crashing tide. People rushing, luggage wheels rattling, voices overlapping, but all I could hear was Clara's cruel laugh circling in my head. I dragged the suitcase toward the exit, its wheels screeching against the polished floor. The smell of burnt coffee from a nearby stand made my stomach churn. I stepped outside, the Colorado wind sharp against my face. A line of taxis idled. I lifted a hand, and one pulled forward. The driver, a lean man with salt in his beard, lifted my bag into the trunk and asked, "Rough morning, sir?" I said nothing and slid into the back seat. The faint smell of pine air freshener filled the cab. My hands still trembled. My reflection in the window showed a lined face and eyes that had gone harder than I ever remembered. "Where did the driver?" asked. His badge said Leo. I clenched the keys in my pocket, their cold edges cutting into my fingers. "Home," I said quietly. "Take me home." The car pulled away from the curb and onto the gray highway slick with rain. Raindrops slid down the glass like streaks of silver. Leo tried to lighten the air. "Long day, huh? Airport's wear you out." He smiled through the mirror. I gave a tight nod. Silence stretched until words slipped from me raw and low. "You ever feel like you gave too much to family?" His eyebrows lifted. "All the time," he said. "I gave my son my old truck when he moved west. He sold it 2 weeks later. Never even told me." His laugh was bitter but gentle. "But you give because you love, right?" I stared at the glass, the city skyline blurred by drizzle. Love. I had given Daniel everything. Tuition money from double shifts, repairs for his cars, the down payment on their honeymoon, and the house they lived in rent-free, my house. And now they had left me in an airport like trash. Clara had mocked me under my own son's silence. They thought I would simply sit and take it. The cab slowed as we turned into my neighborhood. Small houses lined neatly with trimmed lawns. Leo pulled to a stop at my driveway. The 2-story house with peeling paint and sagging porch came into view. He said, "Home sweet home, sir." I paid him and stepped into the rain, the suitcase thudding on the porch as I unlocked the door. The house was cold and quiet. A smell of stale coffee clung to the kitchen. I dropped the keys on the counter, their metallic clink echoing. I looked at the framed pictures on the wall. Daniel as a boy with missing teeth, his graduation when I worked overtime to pay his fees, his wedding day where Clara smiled at him but never at me. I sank into my worn chair, the wood arms polished smooth by years. My chest burned with anger, but beneath it something harder formed. No more. I would not be the fool they mocked. I stood pacing, my eyes on the phone glowing with the number of the bank. My breath came steady. I pressed call. A calm voice answered. "First National, this is Sarah. How may I help you?" I steadied my tone. "This is Edward Grant. I need to make changes to my account immediately." She asked for details, and I gave them. "Remove Daniel Grant and Clara Grant as authorized users permanently." My words were sharp. Sarah confirmed, tapping keys. "Done, sir. They will have no access from this moment." "Do you want confirmation by email?" Yes. Thank you. I ended the call. The silence in the room grew heavier, yet I felt lighter. The first step had been taken. I gripped the keys again, their weight steady in my palm. Let them feel what it was like to be cut off. My phone buzzed with a new message, Daniel's name glowing. I stared but did not open it. Not yet. I let a slow smile creep across my face. Let them sweat in their paradise when the waiter returned their card declined. Let them squirm. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. I stood at the window. The reflection staring back was not the same man who stood abandoned at the airport. This man's eyes were set like steel, and he whispered to himself enough. Night settled heavy over the neighborhood, the drizzle fading into mist. I sat in my study with the desk lamp casting a yellow pool of light across papers and bills stacked unevenly. The old computer hummed softly, its screen still glowing with the confirmation email from the bank. I leaned back in the chair, the springs creaking, a half-empty mug of coffee beside me gone cold. My hands traced the keys resting on the desk, their edges biting my skin. Outside, the street was silent except for the occasional hiss of passing tires. I imagined Daniel and Clara seated in some beachfront restaurant, their glasses raised, smug and free, until the waiter leaned in with their declined card. I pictured Daniel's confident smile fading, Clara's whisper sharp with blame. The thought steadied me, but it wasn't enough. They needed more. They needed to know what it felt like to be stripped of comfort. I opened my drawer and pulled out folders of documents, property deeds, insurance papers, all signed by me. Everything tied to my name. Their world spun on my sacrifices. The roof over their heads was mine. I had carried it all, and now I could take it back. I called the insurance office next, my voice firm as I revoked the policy extensions tied to Daniel's account. Then I rang the credit company and froze the cards linked to mine. By midnight, every line they had leaned on was cut. I closed the phone with a final click, the house around me silent except the faint tick of the old wall clock. I went to the window, pressed my hand to the cool glass, and whispered, "Let them learn." Days passed. The silence in my house broke only by the hum of appliances and the ring of my phone. Daniel tried again and again, his name lighting the screen, sometimes Clara's too. I let them ring. Sometimes I picked up and said nothing, listening to their frantic voices. "Dad, what did you do? We cannot pay the hotel. The bank said our cards are frozen. Please call me back." Clara's tone grew shrill, accusing. "How could you humiliate us like this? We are stranded." But each word only sharpened my resolve. I sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee, listening, then hung up. The power had shifted. For the first time, they were the ones needing me. I went to the mantel, studied the photos again, Daniel's younger face smiling, a promise to make me proud. I touched the frame, my throat tight. But I did not waver. Love had blinded me for years. Now clarity filled its place. A week later they returned. The taxi stopped in front of the house they still called theirs. Rain had washed the streets clean. The tires hissed against the wet gravel. I stood at the window watching as they climbed out, luggage in hand. Their faces pale, Daniel's voice carried up the walk, angry but edged with pleading. Dad opened the door. Clara clutched his arm, whispering too harshly to catch all the words. I let them knock, their fists dull against the wood, then finally opened, the hinges groaned. I stood in the doorway with the keys still in my hand. Daniel looked at me desperate. "Dad, why would you do this? We had nothing. Do you understand what you put us through?" Clara's eyes flashed cold. "This was cruel," she spat. I stepped aside and let them in. The house swallowed their presence. Daniel set the bags down, the air tense. I moved to the kitchen, poured myself coffee, the sound of liquid filling the mug louder than their breaths. I turned to them and said, calm and steady, "I gave you everything. I carried you for years. You laughed at me while using my money. You left me standing in an airport like a burden. Now you know what it feels like to be discarded." Daniel's face fell, shame flickering across his eyes before pride forced it down. Clara crossed her arms, her mouth tight with anger. But silence hung between us. the truth too sharp to deny. From that day, the balance shifted. I locked the accounts, changed the locks on the house, handed Daniel a small envelope with enough for him to find his own place. My voice, even as I said, "You will stand on your own now or not at all." Clara's glare burned, but Daniel said nothing. His shoulders sagged under the weight of years he had avoided. They left with their bags, the door closing behind them. The house quiet once more. I walked through each room, the walls holding echoes of old laughter and bitter words. I touched the frames one last time, then set them face down, their smiles hidden. I sat in my chair, the keys cold in my palm, my reflection in the window older but unbroken. I whispered to the silence no more. Outside, the clouds parted, a thin line of light breaking through, and for the first time in years the house felt like it belonged to me again.